Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin or struggle to feel like you even have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there is so much more in there, you just have no clue how to get it out? Or maybe you just want to know the Bible better and you are looking for any resource to help. Well, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible podcast. We are two sisters.
I'm Veronica.
I'm Erica, and we love to study the Bible, and we love to help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text. So, Veronica,
Yeah.
at nights for our family devotional, my husband is reading through Lois de Verberg's first book, Sitting at the Feet of the Rabbi Jesus.
Oh, with Anne Spangler?
With Anne Spangler. Excellent resources. I would recommend
You're
all
reading
three
that
books.
out loud to your children?
Yeah, just a little chunk at a time.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the littles, I'm not really sure how they're hearing it. I'm not sure how much they're always getting, but I don't think you can start too early. But one thing that struck me the other night when he read was he talked about how, or she talked about, if you were to go into a yeshiva, a Jewish school, you would find the students studying together, at least groups of two, if not three. And they're questioning and they're debating and they're looking at the text together to help each other. And the whole point was how in the Hebrew frame of mind, the Jewish reference, the idea is you study this book with someone else.
Right.
That yes, you can study it on your own, but you get so much more out of it when you're with at least one, if not two other people. You sharpen each other. You can help protect each other from going way outside of the boundaries. And Jesus even seems to do this. He sends the disciples off 2 by 2. This was how he probably was taught, studying with another person. And I thought, that's kind of neat. We do that.
You and I.
You and I study.
Right.
And I feel like as far as our listeners are concerned, what we're asking is like, hey, pull up a chair.
Right.
That's
Join us at the table.
Join us at the table as we study the Bible together. We are the 2 or 3 gathering together to study this book, and we're bouncing ideas off each other, and we're digging in deep, and we'd love to have feedback as you're at the table with us.
Right. What are your questions?
What are your questions?
What insights do you have?
Right. Jump in.
Which I try to get those on our social media.
Right.
Hey,
Right.
this,
And I get it. When I listen to a podcast,
I'm listening to listen.
I'm listening to listen. But if something does jump out, if a question comes as you're at the table with us today, listener, pull up a hot cocoa or coffee, or tea, iced tea or lemonade, and come open the word of God and study with us. That's what we're doing. We're studying together.
So because truthfully, as you're saying that, even though I'm the one reading, I still know there's times it's like, okay, I'm going to ask Erica this question. Because I know you have different insights, you have different just from your studies.
Right.
Even though I feel like I'm leading this study.
Yes, very
I still
much.
know I'm coming to you and going, let me see what Erica says if I've interpreted this correctly.
Right.
Because I just know when I've studied with women and doing
Right.
that.
Right.
It's fascinating. It's like, oh, you do have a different
Right.
You have a farming background. That was really
Right.
insightful.
Yes.
You have a shepherding background.
Yes. I went through, at least for some reason, part of the book of Leviticus years ago, and there was a lady in the study who cooked, like excellent cook. And she was like, oh yeah, that part of the meat God took, that's the best part.
Oh,
She said that part right there.
Did you do that here in town?
Yeah, it was here in town. She's like, that's the yummy part everybody would want. So it makes sense God took it.
Okay.
So it's just, people bring different things to the table, and that's why we study together.
Right.
Yes, you can study on your own.
Right.
But I get so much more out of it.
Right.
Even if it's just commentaries.
Right.
Or books. If you can't study with someone, get a good commentary or a good book. You'll be amazed at what you learn.
Right.
So that's my...
Which is partly
cents.
why I keep throwing out Jacob Milgrom, Mary Douglas, JPS,
Right.
because those are
Your go-to.
my go-tos right now.
That have been wonderful resources.
Right. Dad, actually, did you get that email yesterday?
I did. Yeah. Our dad emailed us.
Yes. Commenting on a podcast. And he's like, who's Jacob Milgrom? And it was like, I don't know. Brian Van handed me a book and I read
believe
it.
he's Jewish.
Is he? I know
think
nothing.
so. She just trusts her
I
brother-in-law
know.
that
I'm
much.
like, Van just gave me the book. So in my world, if Van hands me the book,
yeah,
it's
pretty
safe one to.
Yeah.
So, but yes. But today we are going to look at chapters 23 and 24.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you know what a square is, Erica?
Yeah, he's Jewish.
Okay.
Oh, my word. Okay. Do you not remember the first week you had a circle in that bottom
of just
square?
the chapters.
But for some reason, I picture both rectangles with a circle in them.
Okay, whatever.
And you called it a square when it's not.
It's rectangle.
It's a rectangle.
Fine.
So,
But
we both have issues.
yes, mine are closer. A square can be a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square.
A square can.
Every square is a rectangle.
I thought a rectangle had to have
A rectangle has to have four,
6th grade math.
no, yes, 4 90-degree angles.
Yes.
And 2 pairs of congruent sides.
Oh, 2 pairs of parallel lines.
Yes.
Right. Allie just went through this a few months ago.
Yeah, clearly you didn't pay attention.
Trapezoids and.
But
Anyways, back to why we're all here.
yes, chapters 23 and 24. Again, if we look at our layout of the tabernacle,
Right.
this is going to be in the holy place.
Right.
Because again, this is where these chapters would be either are physically taking place, because we're going
Right.
to talk about in chapter 24. Let me turn there real quick. We're going to talk about oil and bread.
Right.
And this is where they are located in the tabernacle.
Right.
But again, this is also where the priests would be working, is they're doing some of their tasks before God. So chapter 23, actually, I'm not going to spend a lot of time and get very deep into, because it's all about the 7 feasts
Right.
that God has ordained. And we have a podcast on each of those feasts. I don't know the numbers right now. They're actually spread all out. I will go find them and make a graphic.
Oh, my.
That's not that hard.
Not that hard? Okay, never mind. I take back my oh, my.
Yeah, take it back. I just have to go figure out the numbers. And actually, you can even look on our website.
Oh, you have them all there, don't you?
Mhm. The website, if you go under podcasts, scroll down, it will tell you
The feasts.
the different episode numbers for each of the feasts. So
Easy enough.
Yep. There's a couple things I do want to say with this chapter. First of all, the Hebrew word M-O''ed, moed, means fixed times or set times. And so actually that's one of the things when you see set times, fixed times in the New Testament, it always, in my mind, links me back to these feasts.
Yep.
But it starts off not just with a feast, but talking about Sabbath. Because the object of Sabbath is to avoid performing one's daily tasks. It's supposed to be a hiatus from your regular progression of daily labor.
Which I would love to know how, as a mother,
They did that.
they did that. But I find it interesting when
But I guess you're not going to be sewing your clothes.
No, you're not going to be doing everything.
Right.
So you definitely do get a break. But I guess, yeah, I don't know. To me, we tried it, and it's really, really hard.
You have to be in community with this one.
Yeah.
It
That would
really
make it
helps.
easier.
Mhm. But the idea is because the Hebrew word hinafesh, Hinnafesh, is the verb that's used to describe God's rest on the Sabbath day during creation. And that the idea behind it is it enables the person to literally catch his breath, which is what God did on Sabbath. He caught his breath. It allows you a chance to pursue spiritual matters.
Right.
Put aside your to-do list, because truthfully,
It'll still be
we
there
all
the next
know
day.
the to-do list is always there until you're like really old, and then your to-do list does simplify.
Survive.
Yeah, and it's just survival. But the idea is, this is chapters 1 through 7. I said it last week. were made at the initiative of the laity. That was when you go, I want to bring God a gift. I want to bring him an offering to draw near into his presence for whatever reason, be it a thanksgiving or an act of worship, an involuntary act of worship in a way, or I've been impure, be pure again. God, those are whenever you want. But God says there are these 7 times spread throughout the year that you will come into my presence.
Right.
And you have basically 3 in the spring, kind of 1 in the beginning of early summer, and then 3 in the fall.
And they're really together in the fall.
They really are.
It's like boom, boom, boom.
It's all super.
When we lived in Israel, and we had gotten there in the fall, because that was when we went back, Brian and I, and it was like, everything's closed all the time, because we went right into their holiday season. And it was really hard for us Americans to adjust again to that. Like, oh, that's right. They close every Friday night. That's right.
Right.
And now they're still closed because it's a holiday.
But these are a chance to pursue spiritual matters, to have time. I love that God goes every Sabbath.
Right.
Set that side of time to be with me and to be with your family and just catch up. It's not a break. It's not a vacation.
Right.
It's meant to draw you in deeper into fellowship with others, to open up your homes, open up your table.
Be intentional.
Yes. And let's discuss God and talk about him. Your 11-year-old is really stressing about that right now.
She is, yeah.
We were just talking before the podcast of, I want to bring this friend over, this new person I'm meeting, and share with her, here, read my Bible, do this. And you guys, it sounds like... We don't encouraging her to be a friend.
Yes, she's just meeting this girl, and she wants her to come over and read her Bible. And it's like, well, let's get to know. Like, yes, that's wonderful, but don't be a friend,
right? And she even said, I would love for somebody to ask me, why do you believe there's a God? Right. I mean, it's just it's coming out of Allie naturally. I want to share this,
right? Which is such a blessing.
And she's looking for targets. Essentially.
Yes.
But that's kind of what you're supposed to do with Sabbath.
Right.
Use that time. Open up your home. Have people in and ask them those questions and just start a dialogue with people around you. But so we have 7 feasts. And one of the things was interesting is I'm just going to touch on them real quick, like I said. The Feast of First Fruits, which happens in the spring. Israel is actually farming God's land.
Yes.
God owns the land. And so he's saying, as you farm my land, as you use it, you are to bring me then the first fruits of what you got back to me.
Yep.
And then, because then he's also saying you're using and you're providing then gifts for the poor.
Yep.
And how you glean and how you do all this.
You're not allowed to eat any new produce till you bring the first fruits.
Which is really...
Right. You're still living off of last year's food and fruit and veggies until you do this.
Because in a way, you're offering it to God, going, God, I'm trusting you. I'm going to give you
the first, and you'll provide more. Which is fascinating. With Jesus was raised on the first fruits.
Right.
And he is the first fruits of the resurrection. So if God provided one first fruit...
Right.
Then more will come eventually. But that's a whole nother
topic and podcast.
Yep.
The Festival of Trumpets, I just found this interesting. It happens in the 7th month. But you do, and again, you see 7. You see 7 days. The 7th year is an important year. The Jubilee, that's the end of 7 sets of sevens. I'm not sure all my math right there on that one. But so now you have the 7th new moon of the year is kind of set apart from the other ordinary new moons.
Right.
Just like the 7th day is to the ordinary other 6 days. So you have in the fall then, in your 7th month, which you're complaining about, you have all of these feasts closely packed together.
Right.
And that's what I have for chapter 23.
Okay.
Because like I said, I want people to go back and just listen to those other podcasts. Now, chapter 24, you are continuing the list of Israel's responsibilities. And it starts off talking about the oil, and the bread. Interesting fact, the bread was not consumed by God, but it was put on display for a week, and then it was eaten by the priests.
Right.
And Jacob Milgrom says it didn't go stale because it didn't have yeast in it.
Which we were talking about this earlier, and I hadn't even thought about it, because normally with bread,
it goes
stale. And so she's like, well, what about the matzah you have? I'm like, yeah, it's just a dry cracker. So it doesn't go stale. It's a dry cracker.
Stays a dry cracker.
Stays a dry cracker. So yeah.
But then this comes into play when David,
is running from Saul.
and he goes in and he eats the bread.
Right. Which the priest was okay doing because life trumps almost everything.
Right.
And so the priest was actually, in some respects, keeping David alive. Now, it cost him his life later on, sadly.
Yeah.
But at that moment, it was okay. And Jesus even uses that argument later on in Matthew and the Gospels when the disciples are eating grain on the Sabbath. And he's like, hey, if David can eat this bread that's only for the priest because life is that important, these guys are getting like heads of grain to eat on the Sabbath.
Right.
Life matters.
Which is why I keep saying Leviticus is so foundational to all these other books and stories because, okay, fine, the priest gave David bread. No big deal. Well, now you go, oh.
David's not a priest.
Right. But then you even go, Saul killed the priests.
Yeah. He did. His men, an Edomite, I think it was. Doeg, Edomite. Like, that's huge.
Yeah. Wow. You just touched.
Right. Because Saul's men wouldn't do it. Like, he told them, kill the priests. And they were like, no way. Nope. And a non-Israelite says, I'll do it. Cool.
So you just go, oh, that's bad.
That's bad.
Yeah. But real quick, verses 2 and 4 talk about the oil because it's actually found in this location in the tabernacle. Just like 5 through 8 talks about the bread. Again, it's found in this location in the tabernacle. But I do want to point out two things because we've talked a little bit about aliens and strangers in the land. Here, 2 verses I want you to read, 16 and then 22.
Okay, I have to find. I'm gonna need to get a new Bible.
Yeah, big one.
Anyone who blasphemes the name of the Lord must be put to death. The entire assembly must stone him, whether an alien or native born. When he blasphemes the name, he must be put to death. 22. You are to have the same law for the alien and the native born. I am the Lord your God.
Okay, because this is one of the few times where God does seem to say, no, the alien falls under this one.
There's no distinction.
I am God, and all of creation
will acknowledge
that.
Right. Makes sense.
Yes. But now we get into an interesting part of the story.
Right.
Or actually finally get a story again.
Right.
I mean, so much of Leviticus is just rules. And we had 2 small narratives. We've already covered one.
Right.
Chapter 10 with the death of Nadab and Abihu. And now we get the other one, which is verses, I don't know if I actually wrote it down.
So the whole verse 10.
Yeah.
It starts at verse 10 through the rest of the chapter.
Thank you. But again, this is not just a neutral marker. But like we saw with Aaron and his sons, bringing that consecrated and holy fire that fell from heaven, then they consecrate the tabernacle. Everything's good to go.
Right.
Fire falls. Then they approach with unholy fire.
Right.
So the holy fire comes out and destroys them.
Right.
So you have the
punishment fits the crime.
Yes. And now we have, again, another story of a breach of ordinances. This one is insulting the holy name. Both of those stories are both brutal. They're short. This one's going to be really short.
Yeah.
And it closes abruptly and just seems to have no interruption as you go back into the laws. Because next week we'll get into chapters 25, 26, and 27.
And it's like this never happened.
It's like it never happened. But it teaches us something. Both of stories give a warning about a sacrilegious approach into God's presence.
Again, the heaviness and the weight
right
of God's presence we don't appreciate today, especially in the Western world. That is just a concept we have got to start grappling with.
And both of these stories happen in Mary Douglas's mind at that entrance into the next level.
So we would be going into the most holy
place.
Place.
You are right at that screen, separating the holy place from the Holy of Holies.
Right.
And so basically what happens in these verses is in the heat of a fight, a man blasphemes the name of the Lord. The Lord's consulted, and then God says to stone the blasphemer. So I want to kind of get into this because it's interesting. If you look into the Hebrew words,
Right.
the one word in verse 16 that they talk about has the same root word as boring a hole or piercing. And so what you have the blasphemer doing, let me find it in my notes. The blasphemer, or piercing or hurling, is what he's doing. He spoke or he pierced with words the name of God. So the blasphemer hurls insults at God, so God has stones hurled at him.
So the hurler gets hurled.
Yes. Yes. You have
Essentially.
kind of like in America, we have the word mudslinger.
Oh, right.
Someone who slings mud is kind of throwing insults at somebody else.
Right.
So you could be saying, as he has slung mud, so let him die by mud slung back at him.
So again, the punishment fits the crime.
So we had in Numbers 10. No, Leviticus 10. Yeah. The burner got burnt.
Right.
And here in chapter 24, the curser gets cursed.
Right.
And then Mary Douglas kept going to Numbers 25 with Phineas. I'll let you go read that beginning of the chapter. But the fornicator gets speared.
You need to go read that chapter to like, oh,
Right.
Yeah, that's
That
quite
all
the
fits.
connection.
The burner gets burnt, the curser gets cursed, and the fornicator gets speared. But all of these remind us about the seriousness of honoring God and approaching him. You do not
do it lightly.
do it lightly.
Right.
And in his sacred place, in his sacred spaces, with his sacred name.
With his presence right there.
Yes. This is a big deal.
Right.
Because each story in Leviticus is a barrier then to the next section. So next week we're going to get into the Holy of Holies.
Right.
Which Mary Douglas says goes with chapters 25, 26, and 27. And because the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies, can only be entered with correct precautions
Yeah.
by the high priest
Yep.
once a year.
Yeah.
This is God's abode on earth. Equivalent then, if we go back to the beginning of this series, to the summit of the mountain where God descended to meet Moses.
Yep.
This is a special, intimate spot where just not everyone comes.
Right.
Only those who have been given access come into God's presence. Because truthfully, in God's frame of the mind, in God's geography, Jerusalem is the center of the world.
Right.
And at the center of Jerusalem is the tabernacle. And essentially in the center of the tabernacle is the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
And that is as close as you can get to God's holy presence
Here
on earth.
I just think, I mean, you made the comment, the only people who can enter God's presence are those he's given access to. And we have been given access as believers. Again, not his physical presence yet, but to enter. And I hate to use the word spiritually because it just feels
Whatever.
but that's the only way we can describe it right now. And how often do we
take it for granted?
Right. It's like big deal. But this is the creator of the universe. And we have been given, like a child with a parent, unlimited access. I mean, I was thinking the other day, I'm amazed at how many times I'll be sitting on the couch reading and Asher, my 6-year-old, will just come sit in my lap while I'm reading. He doesn't ask. He'll just push the book away and come sit.
Right.
And I'm like, Mama. And he's my child. He has unlimited access. The middle of the night, they call out, I'm there. My kids have access to me almost completely unlimited. And
Right.
that's what we have with God. And yet how often we don't use it, appreciate it.
Right. Be thankful.
Be thankful for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully you've enjoyed pulling up a chair to the table today, to go back to Erica's.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. But as always, we would love for you to share this with somebody else. Say, you know what? I want to have a time where you and I
Right.
sit at the table and discuss.
Bring a friend with you.
Yes. It doesn't have to be
Right.
intimidating, hard. Grab a commentary. I've already told you, Mary Douglas, Jacob Milgram, two excellent commentaries on Leviticus
Right.
that I have enjoyed reading and rereading
Right.
as I pull things out each week. But thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.